My Spy, The Eternal City is the 2024 sequel to the 2020 film My Spy. This is directed by Peter Segal. It's written by Erich Hoeber, John Hoeber, and Peter Segal, and of course we have a cast including Dave Bautista as JJ and Chloe Coleman as Sophie. I really liked the first film, so I was looking forward to this one. I had a feeling it wouldn't be as good, and unfortunately I was right about that. The narrative, for me, is not that interesting. And I'd say the first half of the film is okay, the setting up is okay. But once the narrative kicks in, I personally found it to be a little bit dull. It was nowhere near as fun as the first film or as unique as the first film. The first film seemed to be quite different and I really enjoyed that. But with this one, that just wasn't the case. But the characters, particularly JJ, a little bit of Sophie, I really liked. So there won't be any spoilers in this because I do recommend it if you've seen the first film. But I think it's a world away from the quality of the first film. This one is actually set in Italy. And it is actually filmed in Italy as well, which is quite nice. I'm not 100% sure exactly how much of it is filmed in Italy because apparently some of it is filmed in Cape Town, according to IMDb. So if anybody has any information on that, please feel free to let me know. And the reason it's set in Italy is because Sophie is going on a high school trip with her choir to perform in Italy. And JJ goes along. And I don't want to give away too much about the main narrative, but they find themselves in a scheme that's potentially affecting the Vatican City. And obviously that makes the Italy aspect relevant. I did wonder why they'd chosen to set it in Italy. Was it a narrative that could have been set anywhere, but actually it makes a lot of sense. And I think the narrative itself is well written, but it's not what I was looking for. It's not what I was expecting with this film. I find that it's just, for me, kind of boring. If that is your kind of narrative in general, though, outside of comedy-based action films, then you might enjoy it. But for me personally, once the main narrative got underway, and I will say it took a while, it took a very long time to get to that point, once the main narrative happens, I found that it stopped being funny, it stopped being entertaining, the narrative didn't appeal to me. But I'd love to know what you think of it. If that does sound like your kind of story, does it live up to your expectations? For me personally, it's not what I was looking for, it's not what I'd expected in this film. It stopped being entertaining for me. I don't think it was that fascinating. The comedy aspect didn't completely disappear, but it really took a back seat. And obviously, when the narrative progresses, I expected the comedy to drop a little bit because things are getting more serious. But unfortunately for me, it dropped far too much to the point where I just wasn't finding this interesting. However, I want to say about the first half, it did take forever to get anywhere. It was actually not too bad. And I think the main reason for that, for me, is because of the character of JJ. I think he's a brilliant character. I think Dave Bautista does an amazing job with the character. And I really thoroughly enjoyed his performance. That's not to say I didn't enjoy his performance in the second half. I did. It's just not as entertaining for me as the first half. We have a great supporting cast. We have Kristen Schaal as Bobbi again. We have Jeong. We have Anna Faris. Solid cast, great performances, no problems there at all. The narrative for me, it was a film of two halves. The first half was actually pretty good, very promising. The second half felt like it was written by a different person, which it may well have been because we have multiple writers working on this, but it just shifts really dramatically to where I feel like I'm watching a different film, and it just wasn't that entertaining to me. So, not great. A lot of the elements that were great in the first film are no longer present here. And Sophie as a character, unfortunately, because she's older, she's just not as interesting, because one of the great things about the first film is that we have this young character involved in this very chaotic, dangerous adult world because of things JJ was involved in. Obviously, she's a little bit older now, and she's not quite as cute and innocent, so that element is lost. So a lot of the things about the first film just didn't carry over into this one. That doesn't alone make it a bad film. Nothing makes it a bad film. I just don't think it's anywhere near the quality of the first, and that's a bit unfortunate. But JJ is still a brilliant character. Really thoroughly enjoyed Dave Bautista. Sophie is still a good character. is just not quite the same as the first film. Do I recommend it? Yes. If you've seen the first film and you enjoyed it, definitely check this out. If you didn't care for the first film, maybe if you didn't find it funny and that's what you were looking for, then I'd say this is probably not worth watching. However, if you didn't like the first film because you were looking for more action and less comedy, then this one actually might appeal to you a little bit more. So it's not going to be for everybody. For me, it was fine. I didn't regret watching it. I quite enjoyed some of it. Really enjoyed JJ as a character. The narrative, not really ideal for me. My Spy, The Eternal City, was not a disappointment, but it definitely was nowhere near as good as the first film.